So those who weren't able to attend will be able to go through the meeting today. Just brief review of the housekeeping. You encourage people to use this link if you have questions that you'd like to be brought up in office hours, or if you're having problems, or if you have a suggestion. Your accountant's available. There are some of you out there that have more than one company to convert. I've been basically saying, let's wait till you go live with your payroll company. But there's some who's like, well, I'd rather just get started on these other companies. They're not payroll. And so you can do that. But so just request that if that's something you want to look at through the report request. So what we're going to do today, in the email I sent out yesterday, there was a video I made actually for last year's class on the employee templates. If you had a chance to review that, you'll have a little bit of background of what was covered. I've made a new video available, and it will be sent out along with this video of this class that goes through step by step of modifying the employee template. What I'm going to show you here in a little bit is the end result after we've gone through the setup, because it goes through a checklist of things. I'm just going to review the direct deposit. Number of people are interested in the direct deposit, and there's also a video on that that's been available. But I'll just do a quick, once it's set up, how it operates, and then we'll review some of the most frequent payroll reports. We talked last week about the comparisons between the classic version and the desktop or online version, and we'll just look at those a little bit closer, and also look at the reports that are typically done on a quarterly basis, and then have a Q&A. So when getting into the employee templates, I have a couple of screenshots here of how this is really somebody that's modified to where they have a template for administration, employees, the city council. This is obviously a municipality, the police, the mayor, but each of these templates are specific to the different taxes and pay types. If you watched the video yesterday that was sent out, here's an example of some of the pay groups. So instead of bi-weekly, weekly, other people will set up those pay groups according to their department. So that kind of gives you a little idea of the different things that the pay groups do. What we'll look at here for today, though, is I set it up, and then there's this whole video that you can watch, and it'll be sent out with this, that will go through step by step of what we did to we pretended that this company added a satellite office. They're located in New Hampshire, but they're opening a satellite office in Maine. And so it goes through what we've done. There's a checklist of what's in that video that you can watch, of everything that's going to be covered step by step. And so once you watch that video, here's what the end result ended up being. What we had done is we'd gone into the chart of accounts and in the expenses, and just in a simple way, we went ahead and we set up, I modified this to where I changed the salary account to NH for New Hampshire and one for Maine, and same with the office salary. So if you were going to be doing full accounting, you would probably add many more accounts for that. But for our purposes here, where we're just focused on the employee templates and payroll, these are the only modifications that we made on our chart of accounts. So once you go into the payroll, and I encourage you to play around with yours, you can go in, the conversions that we've done for you, it's meant to be a practice. So if you want to go in and experiment on setting up your own templates after watching these videos and looking at how it had been done, feel free to do that, and that may generate some other questions. So anyway, what we've done here in the employee templates, as after we set up that chart of accounts, we went into the employee templates, and to kind of highlight the efficiency of having a template, I decided that this new satellite office in Maine was going to be biweekly payroll, where our payroll in New Hampshire is weekly payroll. So what I did was went in and edited this. So this is the biweekly for Maine, and this is the New Hampshire for Maine. And so so when we had to add taxes, and that's covered in the video, so we set it up so this template has Maine income tax, where, as you can see in the hourly weekly one, Maine doesn't have any income tax. So you can see how things it's set up there.
Roger, that would be New Hampshire doesn't have any.
New Hampshire, I'm sorry, doesn't have any income tax, where Maine does. So anyway, if you're going to have a new employee, I mean, the benefit you had with the conversion is all your employees were set up. You don't have to worry about setting up the employees. They're all set up. And hopefully you've had a chance to test out processing payroll like we covered last week. So this is taking it, now that we have that, if you want to implement new features, this is where, well, what am I going to do if I get a new employee? What am I going to set up? Well, that's what the template's for. And so once we set up that template, then we went in and we created a new employee, Audrey Smith. And so she's the one that's in Portland. I didn't get actually that one part of it in there, but I'll just whatever address. But notice that we just went in there, added her employee, it set it up for the taxes, it set up the pay types that we have for the biweekly, and we decide we're also going to implement vacation sick pay there. And then, just for the benefit of a template in that new office, we're also going to be offering a 401k and disability insurance deductions. The 401k isn't active because she's a new employee, and we don't provide 401k benefits until they've worked 6 months at the firm. So those things are just automatically set up. When we went in and we entered in the employee's name, went into here and selected hourly, paid biweekly in Maine, and then all this was set up for this particular employee. And so the video that covers this in detail, where we actually shows editing the chart of accounts, it shows editing and adding the tax and adding the state tax and so forth. And then the advantage of a new template. So picking up for where we left off, let's say we just hired another new employee for our main office. And so we would say here, and we'll say this is Sally Fields. And her social security number is 777 88999. And well, she's not in New Hampshire, she's for our Maine office. So here we have in Maine, we also can just say create. And so now we've added that new employee. Here's Sally Fields, and you can see that she has the Maine tax already set up. You'll see in her pay type, it's already set up. And what we had a default set up for $18, but if you were hired them and they had a different hourly rate, you would go ahead and update them to be $20 or whatever was the agreement when you offered them the job. So
Roger,
yes.
Would you mind if I add something to this?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So under deductions, would you click on that again, please? All right. So if you look where it says active, as Roger mentioned, if we don't start them for, let's say, 90 days, you can go ahead and make them active right away. But do you see down below where it has effective dates? You can put in a date 90 days from now. And you don't have to remember to go in and change that in case you forget. It will actually calculate based on that effective date that you put in there. So I just wanted to show that you can use it that way too, to put in an effective date. So you don't have to go, oh my goodness, I forgot to pay them that. You can just go in and change that to February 1st or whatever date you want to make it as of. So that's another way to use that. And
That's a good point. The other point is the rate too. I mean, you've been setting these up a lot, Barb, and so I had just set up in the template to be 3%. But usually when you offer a 401k or any kind of plan like that, maybe the employee only wants to contribute 2%. This is the employee's contribution. And so if it is different, it can be 3%. And then you do have the option to say, well, I want it to be 5% for the first, say, $5,000. And then once I reach 5, then I only want to give a 2%. So the employee has a lot of flexibility in terms of what they can contribute. There is a maximum that you can set. If there's a maximum that can be contributed to the 401k in any particular year. And once that maximum's reached, so like in this case, we definitely, if we're going to do this 5,000 thing, and I don't know, you've set up more of this kind of stuff, Barb, than I have, but isn't the yearly limit controlled
I'd have to go,
by the
yeah,
administrator?
Right.
And I know for like an IRA, there's a maximum of 7,500, which is just part of the IRS code. But this is stuff you would want to check with your accountant. But anyway, that's a good point, Barb. And then so this one's active, and in next March, it'll start calculating these contributions. And along those same lines, if that's what the case is, if you're also going to match it, then you would want to go ahead and set up whatever match you're going to give at that point in time. And would we?
Well, quite often, when you have a match, there's a 401k that for the employer is quite often based on what the employee is contributing. So in this case, we just happen to have it set up that way for the 401k employer match. So what it will do, if you go to the rates, is it will base it, like, let's say up to a certain amount, it will put in 50%, because like quite often employers will say, well, I will match it up to 50% of whatever you put in. Okay, so they might have a limit dollar wise or percentage wise. So those are just some things that we can use to set up benefits and deductions based on what your particular requirements are. So there are other ways to play with this. And some of this would be determined under the actual benefit setup. This is the benefit setup by employee, but there is a place to determine some of this even further with the actual benefit setup. Maybe Roger, yeah, if you wanted to click done.
We could just go into benefits.
Yeah, so this is where you can make a lot of different changes on those benefits. That's getting a little bit into the details that maybe you don't necessarily want to discuss right now, but I wanted you to see how much flexibility there is when you want to do benefits. So instead of you having to sit and think about, well, what is this and this and this, it can be calculating those liabilities for you all year long. So some benefit packages, depending upon who you have this with, are going to require you to pay it monthly if it's the employee share, and if it's the employer share, it's a liability that you might only have to pay annually, but it will still track that for you so that you can look back and say, oh, I'm going to owe $20,000 at the end of the year for my employer's share of their 401. So just a lot of flexibility there. I'm sorry, Roger, to interrupt, but I thought
No,
that might
that's
be
okay.
important to see.
But this is in the actual setup. If you wanted the match thing, you're basing the this benefit is going to be based on this deduction. So whatever they contributed, then it's going to up to $100, 50, whatever amount that it's going to take 50% of whatever that contribution is that the employee made. So you may only want to be 10%. I mean, that's really an internal decision. So, but the main point is this can all be set up in advance so that when that new employee comes in, all of this is all set up when you add that employee, or like I said, we just added Sally Field. So all of this is set up both for the benefits, the deductions, the liability, the pay types. And the only thing you may have to modify after you've added them is to go into taxes. And if this person was single instead of married, you could change that, or their in their pay types, like I said, we mentioned earlier, of the hourly rate if it's different. And I guess the one other thing in the way of the taxes is if not every state, in this case, they do have married and single, but we set the template up to be married, but this person happens to be single. So a little bit of follow-up after you do the initial template setup. So, but that the video, like I had mentioned earlier, is going to show, it's going to go through all of these steps that you see, actually the editing of the chart of accounts, the editing of the templates, the adding of the state tax tables for Maine, and so forth. So you really get a good idea of the typical setup that's normally done if you're setting up something from scratch. And so we just kind of needed to backtrack from that, since this isn't anything you've had to do just to test out the converted program, because these are all set up for your existing employees. So the video is available. I'm going to be uploading it to the YouTube channel, but it'll be included with this recording as far as the actual detailed step-by-step setup. So then the other thing that was covered is we changed our pay groups. And so I just put weekly NH and biweekly ME. So when you go to do the payroll, and we're going to run a payroll, you'll see the last one that I did was, we have to go in here, was the biweekly. So I did the Maine payroll. So if I was going to go and do the New Hampshire payroll, I would come here and I would exclude Maine and I would include New Hampshire, and then I would say next pay run. And so you may have to you will have to override the dates in this situation because it's advancing their pay run based on the biweekly setting. So they're on weekly, so we'd have to go back to weekly to set this up. And then now we're set up and we have all our weekly payroll that we have done on the original conversion. And so we've done that. We go back and we're going to do the biweekly one, and we would come back here, change this to biweekly, go to here, and we would change the dates appropriately in terms of making it a 2 weeks versus the 1 week. Now, most of you won't be doing that, obviously. So most of the time when you say next pay run, it's just going to advance the dates, and whether your main payroll's biweekly, it'll advance the dates biweekly, or if your payroll's weekly, it'll advance them weekly. So, but then when you go into here, and now we also have added Sally Fields, and she's also biweekly, and she worked the full 80 hours, and so did Audrey. And so that's the hours for this week. Then we do the calculate, and then we review the report. This is all the things we recovered over last week. confirming everything's correct. This person is getting disability. Sally Fields isn't at this stage, so there's nothing being deducted there. So when you close, then you can go ahead and create the checks and print the checks and so forth, like we covered last week. So it's good that you go ahead and practice maybe editing your templates. So just however your pay periods are, whether it's biweekly or weekly, go ahead and edit the template that's in your converted data to match up. And then this could be good practice because some of the people have indicated that, yeah, I want to start tracking the vacation, or I want to, show on the pay stub that they had sick pay, or that they had vacation pay, or they had a bonus pay, or whatever. So a lot of these things is how you want to have things set up in your business. So whenever you hire a new employee, then you know how easy it is to get them quickly set up and added to the payroll. So the next item that we want to cover, is the direct deposit review. There's also a video that will be included on that goes through the whole setup process. I'm going to jump, just FYI, this is our people's choice on the cloud. So you can see that between being on the cloud and being on the desktop are very, very similar. So it's just getting logged into the cloud. But in our cloud demo one, what we have done, and that's what's covered in this video, is we've gone into setup, we've gone into payroll options, we've gone into direct deposit, and we've filled in this information that's needed to set up the direct deposit to go through your bank. And then also we go through the process of adding an employee that wants to do, I think we did it with Ida Done Better. And so when you go to the miscellaneous tab, if you check this direct deposit, then this window opens up here. And here's where you can go in and you put in the bank name for the employee and their routing number and account number. And that's the default net check amount. But you do have the ability to set up additional bank accounts. So this all comes out of the net check. That you don't have to transfer money or anything. It's just when they're paid via direct deposit, this is how the money is going to be distributed. And so that's set up along with the main setup. And so what you end up with when you actually process a payroll, I think this is the one. So they don't get a check, but what they do get is a stub that you can print out. So the stub would be the same as if they had a check, the detail, the gross and the taxes and so forth. But up here, you can see the net check that they got for payroll was $450.56, but it was deposited where $400.56 went into their main account, and then $25 went into one savings account, another $25 into another savings account. So a lot of people like that feature. And again, that's covered in the video on how we set that up. And so when you actually run a payroll with direct deposit, I'm pretty sure we have everything set up for weekly. I'd have done better, which highlights the fact that not everybody has to be on direct deposit. Like most places like to put everybody there because it just streamlines it. But Ida Done Better is the only one in our list here that has direct deposit. So when you go to calculate the payroll, you put in your hours and everything like you normally do. But when you go to calculate, the calc report's still the same. And you can review everything on there to make sure it's correct. It doesn't really say that Ida Done Better's direct deposit, but when we go to create checks, we're not going to make a backup. You can see it splits it into two here. Anybody with a computer check, the first check number is going to be 5100. Anybody with a direct deposit is going to get a other check number designation. So when you go to create the checks and you go and look at the reports, you can see this is the same calc report, but after you've created the checks, you can see the checks number that were assigned. Or down here, I'd have done better. She didn't get a computer check, so you can easily see which ones. And so when you go to print the check, it's only going to print checks for those who get checks. It's not going to print a check for I'd have done better. So I'd have done better. And then the other things that were covered in the video is the creation of the ACH, or what's called the notcha file, that you would be uploading or giving to your bank, however they determine you want to get the ACH file to them. So this is one that's been already exported, report 2. And so you can go in and you can pull up report number 2 and preview it or print it. And so this is basically a recap of this direct deposit. There's only one employee that got a direct deposit, but all the employees that had direct deposit and the grand total of the direct deposit. And then the item is, there's 3 different listings because it went into 3 different bank accounts. And so most banks have a verification that when you upload a file to them, and it's normally done through internet banking nowadays, it will actually read in the file and it'll tell you that it's a direct deposit ACH of $450.55. So there's some verification that goes on in that process. So in terms of those specific details, that's covered more in that video that I was talking about, and that's the process. I mean, it doesn't change your actual processing of the initial payroll. It only changes the back end where you're going to print a pay stub to give to them instead of a check for those that have the direct deposit. So the other thing that I want to cover, I'm just going to go in and look. We'll generate a few of the most frequently generated reports, and I'm going to reference a little bit on where you would go, what reports in Classic. I mean, most of the reports in Classic are based on the 941 report, the tax liability register by date in the Classic program. And essentially there's reports that are very similar. I mean, they provide the same information, they just look much different. So in looking at that, we'll go back to our converted data. And when you go into reports, they're all, broken down into the general reports. Most of the reports that people ask about, it's mainly related to the quarterly filing. So if you want to go into the employer liability reports, there is a report that's the same as the 941. Now, then, if you go and do the 941 form, which we'll do here in a bit, it's always just going to do it as if it's the end of the quarter. I mean, it just calculates it. But when you do a 941 report here, you can do it by pay period. You can do it by month. You can look at the 941 liability in any way. So for those of you who got your data converted, if you want to go ahead and go to last quarter, and which would be the third quarter, you could set it to the third quarter, and you would go ahead and click print to print preview. And did we not? We don't have any in this one. Let's sorry about that. I will do it for this year. You should be able to do it for last quarter and everything will come up. This is our demo data. But if you just want to look at it for the year, it does it by pay period or by pay run, but then at the end of the report, you have the totals these are the total wages, these are the taxable wages, and these are the taxes, the federal tax, the Medicare, the Social Security, and then the employer share. So that's our liability for the year in this particular company. We'll go back if you wanted. Let's let's just say we wanted to do it and we wanted to verify. And I might have you jump in if you want, Barb, especially as we go into the quarterly reporting, because you do payroll for a couple of different people and you kind of have your checklist that maybe you have some input in this regard. But I'm going to change this to, I'm pretty sure we have enough payroll information in here to do the first quarter. And so in our data set, this is our first quarter totals. And so I usually recommend that you print this report, and then at the same time, you can, when you go to actually do the 941 form, then you can make sure that the totals match up on that report and on the 941. And then it's just a good cross check, just so you know. I know there's some other verifications that you quite often do, Barb. I don't know if there's anything you want to input and how you verify.
Yeah, I really like doing this report, that report, and comparing it to my 941. It just gives me an extra double check to make certain that everything is pulling together. It's just good to keep a copy of that along with that 941 liability report. Plus, I always go back and double check all of my deposits against it. Then I can make certain that I have deposited the right amounts at the right time. So those are just little cross checks I do to make sure everything is in order.
So the demo data, we didn't do a complete quarter. So one of the reasons that this comes up with 0 employees is this is based on how many employees that were working on the 12th, I think the 12th of the third month of each quarter. And we don't have any March data in here. But again, as you can see, you can print this 941 form anytime you want. It's just going to give you quarter to date or whatever information based on which quarter you selected. But doing that cross check, like Barb was saying, it's just a good verification. It's sort of like a bank rec kind of thing. So some of the other reports that I find we use a lot, I mean, I know Barb does this is like the first report she does when she's going to do a quarterly. So I'll just do this year and we'll just make this 331. But again, it can be
Roger,
yes.
if you would go ahead and pop into that criteria wizard really quick and show them how that works.
Yeah, I'll do that with the
Okay.
report.
All right. All right.
So this payroll summary. So this for these date ranges. So this is first quarter in this company. And so this is the gross amount of money that Julie Baker made in this quarter. And this is the breakdown of how that money was, whether it's salary, overtime, and so forth. Now, in this particular example, we don't have any 401k deductions or any pre-tax deductions, but like a lot of pre-tax deductions like 401k are only on federal and state tax, and it's not on Social Security and Medicare. So it seems redundant on this particular page that while the wages were $5,076 and so it's taxable, it's like, duh. Well, if they'd had a $100 401k pre-tax, well, it subtracts $100 from here. So the taxable would actually be what the $49.76 taxable. So this shows the wages and taxable wages, and it itemizes it by tax. And over on this side is the employer share of that. So it's a nice view of each individual employee. And this is often what I will reference, especially on the taxable amounts, because this in this column, the taxable is what's going to show up on the W-2. So if there is a pre-tax on the W-2 for the federal, it's going to, if it was $100, well, for the whole year, it's going to be more than that. But for this particular one, you know, it'd be $49.76 instead of $5,076. So I often will use this report to compare what the W-3s were going to be. And this, if you do this for the whole year, this actually would be your W-3 totals. So this is a report that I print quite frequently.
I want to, Roger, I want to point something out. You selected under your date range this year, okay?
And then
but it was already set to a quarter. So it will, that overrides whatever date range. I mean, if you had selected quarter, then you'd have to select the date. So you have to just kind of pay attention to the dates that you're using. And if you use the criteria wizard, that will override whatever else you selected on that front page. So I just wanted to point that out.
I could do that. I have it set to specific dates. And so when I selected this year, then I just went ahead and edited the dates. So,
right. I just wanted to point that out. If you run that report and you're not getting the information you think you should, just double check your dates.
So the other part of the criteria wizard is your quarterly suitor report. And so what you'll notice is down here, it says Q1. And so whatever quarter you're doing for your suitor report, you go into the criteria wizard and you would select it. And then you would, if you're going to do it for second quarter, you would change this to a 2. And you can see down here, it says Q2. So that's, I mean, to filter things out, the criteria wizard can be used as, in some reports like that one, the general report, you can go into the criteria wizard and just select a particular employee. So so this is Q2. I'm going to change it back to Q1. So if you had more than one state, which now we do, oops, when you go to here and then you actually go to print, it's going to ask, well, which state do you want? No, I want my Maine, or I want my New Hampshire. And then that's the information you're going to get based on which state that you selected. So the other option, like what Barb mentioned, the criteria wizard, and this is probably where instead of the payroll summary, you want to look at the payroll detail, which would be much like the employer ledger card in People's Choice Classic, but you don't necessarily want everybody. And so I just want to look at what we've paid this year to a particular employee, and that's where you can go into the criteria wizard and click next. And so I want to add a criteria, and I want it to be the employee, and I just want to know what have I paid Julie Baker so far this year. And so when I click finish, you can see down here it says employee Julie Baker. So we're only going to get payroll detail on Julie Baker. And when you go to print, then you see every check that they've received this year. So, you know, here you can see the check date range and the date of the check and what they were paid each pay period. And then at the end of this report is always a recap of what they were paid. As you remember, the 5,076 that we saw in that other report. Well, but that also the employer had a $423.85 in employer taxes. So it actually cost the business $54.99.85. But the net check that went to the total of the net checks that went to the employee is $45.8406. So just a little bit of recap, and then you can see up here a recap of how they were paid. So if you do implement like vacation pay or sick pay or holiday pay, and they've claimed some of those, they would also be itemized on here. So that's I don't know, is there any other example, Barb, you can think of where you use the criteria wizard other than selecting an employee?
Well, anytime I do a tax report, you know, if I'm doing state taxes, I always run those by, if you go up to the tax reports, I always do my state taxes individually. You need that information to pay each state if you have state income tax. And I always take those totals and compare it to all of my state tax deductions. I just like to make sure they all add up. So now this is going to give us all employee taxes, by check.
By tax. So
Right.
federal income tax. This is every check that went to Julie Baker, and here's the amounts for each.
That's a lot of paper if you have very many employees, which is why I will go into the criteria wizard and I will just select the state that I want.
So in this case, you just would go into here, you would go to here, you would say tax.
I'd add, you have to click add.
Right. And then the tax, and then you would select which state you want.
Right.
And so if that's the case, when you print, you can see it's only one page.
Right.
Because we've only had a couple of checks for one thing.
But it's really nice if you have very many employees. I like to do it because this way, because a lot of states want to know how many employees you had as of the 12th of blah, blah, blah. And so you can actually see how many you had as of a certain date or a certain tax. So that criteria wizard can come in really handy. And if it feels a little confusing at first, it won't for very long. You can learn how to use that pretty quickly.
So you probably have gotten overwhelmed of all the different reports that are available between the benefit reports and the tax reports and the liability reports. I mean, there's just tons of reports in here. And the ones we're showing you now are the ones that are most frequently used for filing quarterly or just for researching information on a particular employee or so forth. And then this tax deposit register was something that Barb referenced as far as comparing your deposits. Now, this is only going to show up if you use the process pay tax liabilities. If we do our tax deposits, so like we did another payroll year and we're going to go make another deposit. Well, what's everybody is doing, I think you have to make your deposits online now. Pretty much have to, don't you, Barb?
Yeah. I don't know about every state, but this one
for federal anyway.
Right. For federal, you pretty much want to just pay it online. It's the easiest way to do it. You get such a nice confirmation. I print that confirmation. I usually do my 941 report for whatever time frame I'm doing, and then I pay it, and then I come in here and click create check. Even though you're not creating a check, you can just say other.
That's why you assign it, and then if you want, maybe you want to put the confirmation number in here that you received when you filed it on. But then this way it gets added to your bank account. So if you are using People's Choice to maintain the bank balance and reconcile your bank, you want to get that withdrawal that you sent to the government in your system. So then you would go ahead and just create the check. And even though it was an other check, some people will print it and staple it as a verification, and maybe they'll staple it to a calc report or put it in some folder. I'm not sure if that's what you normally do, but I'll say no, we're not going to print anything. But yeah.
I never print that. I just print the report and the confirmation from the website when I pay it.
And so when you, I guess I didn't change the date on that. But you can see which checks have been issued for your tax payments. This should be, I didn't get my date changed, so we have an October payment. But this will show where, so you can see what the deposits and everything that shows up here, especially for the 941. if you're using the pay tax liabilities, when you go do the 941, it's going to put that on the form as deposits made. So it should come up with balance due of 0 when you go to print the 941. So that was covering what I wanted to cover as an overview, but instead of spending a lot of time going through everything, I would just wanted to see the end results. So there's both a detailed video on this direct deposit setup and a detailed on the employee template setup that you can watch, and you can see every step along the way of what we did to get that set up. And so if the challenge would be that for you to go ahead and in your converted data company, go ahead and modify your employee template to match up how your payroll is set up internally. So those are the main things I wanted to cover this week. It's like we're sitting pretty close. I don't know if I haven't been monitoring the chat.
I've been watching, and I also reminded people to ask questions if they had any, and I don't see any, but now's the time to go ahead and ask it if you have any.
So if there's any questions, we can backtrack if you want and go back and look at something as it relates to direct deposit, or as it relates to the employee template, or to payroll processing, or if you've tried payroll to reprocess a payroll with your converted data, have you run into problems? Do you have any questions? Now's the time to bring that up. And it's also, it's like, that's why if you are doing those type of things, I really recommend using that link for a question, because the best time to submit that question is when you're playing around in the program and it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't understand what this is. Go ahead and submit that request, and we'll make sure we bring that up in next week's office hours. And or if it's a kind of more of a specific question, we may just reply by email to say, oh, you need to do this, and then you'll be okay, that kind of thing. So we really encourage you to do that, and to ask questions if you or bring up problems that you might run into.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Hi, my name is Danusia Ilarco. I have been working with Christine to set this up. My mom was a bookkeeper, and she had me use the People's Choice Classic, and I was familiar with that, but she just passed, and I wanted to get this set up for my personal business, but I am having issues just setting it up, and I wanted to know if there's a way to help me to set it up from scratch, because I was using the template, and it's like I can't get my income to be in there correctly. My expenses are going where they need to go, but it's just not working out well for me.
Well, there are, I don't know when you installed this. Let me just bring up something here.
Because I tried to download the licensed one because I paid for the program, but it's still showing me as the trial. So I'm not
Yeah,
sure if it was initially set up correctly
Yeah,
from jump, and that.
it needs to be activated, but
yeah. The activation file didn't go through correctly.
let me just bring up. She downloaded the setup file.
Yeah, I actually helped her do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So we did the two new software setup, the setup and then the update and then the activation file, and inputted all of her checks off of the spreadsheet that she's been using. So along the line, things didn't update the way they were supposed to. So I was going to go back and to re-download the license file for her, because that I knew that from the last time did not go through correctly.
Yeah, what's a little bit different is you're wanting to start from scratch. Do you see the menu on screen here?
Yep.
So if you bring that back up, this is what you did to install the program. But there is a video here you can watch and starting from scratch. And then
Okay.
there's also this video that you can watch. There's on your menu, there's a Schedule C template company.
Okay.
And so what you can open up that company and go into company information and type in your information, and you can go in and enter in a deposit. I mean, it kind of takes you through the steps to just get started. And because it has a bank account set up, so you can rename the bank name to match your name. And so you might want to just watch this video. And
Yeah.
and then there's also, you can go to the YouTube channel. There's all sorts of videos there, including these that we'll be looking at today and the ones that will be sent out with the video. I guess I need to make sure that she got added to the list, Christine. So when I
Okay.
send out these videos, she can do that. But
Okay.
she's coming from a little different perspective. She's not converting her mother's company. She's
Right.
just converting, she's setting up a new
No, I'm
company,
setting up,
a
setting
new
up a new,
company
Yeah.
in the new version, not converting it
yes.
from classic. So you're kind of a little bit, you're used to classic, but you're not converting classic, where most of the people
No.
on our call today I have been using classic and are converting their stuff to the new version. And so as you can see, it brings over everybody and they're already set up, ready to go. And our
Mm.
first sessions have been mainly focused in payroll. And my understanding from talking to Christine, you're not really doing payroll. You're just wanting to keep
No.
track of your checkbook and track your expenses and your income. And
Yes.
that's what that Schedule C template is ideally set up for.
Yeah.
Then you can go in and edit the chart of accounts to match however your spreadsheet is set up. Because it
Okay,
doesn't really,
so basically I need to delete what I was working with and try to get it to install the actual program because it's still on a trial basis. Is that what
wait,
I'm understanding?
wait a minute, Dave. I'll call you after this, but I think I was going to ask Rod
I mean, if
that we started from scratch and put it
these are
into
things
the
you can
template.
do from scratch and working on your own and not cost anything. But I mean, you can purchase support and we can, Christine
Right.
could spend some time actually going through and working step by step, but there would be a charge for that. And Christine can talk to you about that here after our class here.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I like I said, the using the old system versus this one, this new system reminds me of trying to work with QuickBooks, and QuickBooks was confusing as anything to me. So I was more comfortable with the People's Choice. And then with playing around with it, then I kind of got the familiarities from the classic to the new version. But like I said, I don't know if I'm inputting stuff wrong, or if it's not set up correct because my income will not show, um, what have you. The reports aren't coming out right, according to a spreadsheet that I made. So I'm all confused and
Well,
yeah.
um,
So
there's lots of videos, but if you need some one-on-one help, I mean, we do offer that, but we do charge for it.
Understood. Yeah.
But a lot of,
Roger,
yes.
it doesn't usually take too much to analyze it and zero in on where something isn't working quite right. So
Right.
if we just take a little look at it, I think we could probably zero in on it and explain what you need to do. So
Yeah, that can
Okay.
probably be done. I mean, you said you did purchase it, so you do get some support.
Okay.
I don't know how much time, Christine, I think she's mainly provided it as part of the order. So
Yeah.
so we could schedule to look at it and use some of the support time that comes with the purchase. Because did you look at that PD video that shows how checks are entered in the old system versus how checks are entered in the new system?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so as far as the data entry goes, I don't think it's going to be too tough to learn. But like Barb said, we can probably take a look at it and find out why the chart of accounts probably in the chart of account setup or whatever, we can look at it and explain why the income statement isn't showing what you're expecting to see.
Okay. That would be great.
Okay, any other questions? All right,
No.
I'm going to stop the recording.